Namo Namaha Bhaktam Sarvesham Hartam Swagatam. Welcome back to the channel Sanskrit Sopanam. I hope you are doing great. I'm also good. And moving ahead in our Learning Sanskrit through Gita series, today we'll be covering the 48th shloka from the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And again, as we saw in the previous shloka, Krishna has now dived deep into the actual philosophy of Karma Yoga. So in all these shlokas, in this verse and the coming verse, in all these verses, he's going to tell the right attitude with which we have to act. Okay, so how can a person become focused in the work without any egocentric desires, without any egocentric attachments? And when we can act like so, then only our work becomes truly inspirational work. So he's going to tell all the secrets about this Karma Yoga, what started in the very famous shloka that we saw in the previous verse. It is just going to continue in the following verses. So what is it and what we can learn from Sanskrit point of view? This all we will see. So without wasting any more time, let's quickly dive in today's video. Okay, so this is the shloka in hand. Let me go through the shloka once. Yogasthak kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Okay, so this is our original shloka and this here is the Sandhi Vichcheda. So let us quickly see what all Sandhis we can spot in the shloka. So if you come here and see this pada, Siddhya Siddhyoho, and between this Siddhi and a Siddhi, you have the Yana Sandhi that is happening here. That is what is happening here. That Siddhya Siddhyoho. That there is a substitution of this Yakara between Siddhi and Asiddhi. So that is the Yana Sandhi that we spot here. And then again, if we see this Samu Bhutva, so very easily we can spot this Utva Sandhi now. That initially it was Samaha and Bhutva. And due to Utva, due to Ukara Sandhi, this Samaha, this became Samu. As we see in the original shloka, Samu Bhutva. And then lastly, we also spot a Sandhi here. Because the actual word was Yogaha. But here, due to Visarga Lopa Sandhi, in the Moola shloka what you have is this Yoga Uchyate. Okay, because after an Aha, you have any Swara. So the Visarga Lopa happens. So that is this Sandhi, Visarga Lopa Sandhi. So the simple three Sandhis that we can spot in this shloka. Again, this all the Sandhi Niyamas and all the word by word breakdown of this shloka is given in the PDF sheet as usual that you can download from the link in the description box. Now let us move on and start the decoding of the shloka. Okay, so in the first line of the shloka, we can spot this Kriya Pada Kuru. Okay, so we are starting with this Kriya Pada as a reference, as a starting point. Kuru. Kuru means you do or you perform. And the reason it sounds like an order as a command is because this Kri Dhatu is in Lot Lakara, is in imperative mood. So that is the nature of imperative mood Lot Lakara, right? Either it is to make a request or it is to give an order or in a giving a command in that sense. So since Krishna is speaking directly to Arjuna, so it is sort of a command, it is sort of an order. That Kuru, that you Arjuna do, you Arjuna perform. Okay, that is the impact of this Lot Lakara and again Madhyama Purusha and Ekvachanam. So Kri becomes Kuru, the meaning as we have already discussed. So we are starting with this Kriya Pada and immediately the question will be Kani Kuru, that what does he do? So in response to that we have Karmani Kuru. Okay, Karmani, this is coming from the Pratipadika Karman. And this exact word we saw in the previous shloka. Okay, Karmani Eva. The first word was coming from this Pratipadika Karman. It is a neuter gender Pratipadika. The meaning of Karman is work or action. Okay, this form Karmani. So since this Karmani, this is the object, this is the karma of this Kriya. So it is in Dvitiya Vibhakti. Because it is an object of this Kriya, it is in Dvitiya Vibhakti. And Karmani, looking at the form, we can already see it is a plural, it is Bahuvachanam. So Karman and Dutiya Vibhakti Bahuvachanam becomes Karmani. The meaning is simple that you Arjuna perform actions. You Arjuna do the work, do your duties in all of that sense. Okay, so I hope this Pada and this Shabda Rupa, this form, this is clear. Now if we move on, so now we have interesting details. Because okay, to perform an action, to do the work, that is there. But Krishna wants Arjuna, and through Arjuna he wants all of us to perform an action with a certain kind of attitude. And what is that attitude? That is what he is going to speak now in the shloka. So that is why I am asking this question that Kim Kritva, that having done what or after doing what we have to perform an action. So the first thing Krishna says is Sangam Tyaktva Karmani Kuru. Okay, so Krishna is basically telling us that after abandoning the attachment, you perform the actions. And again, what is this attachment? So we have to remember the context of the previous shloka. In previous shloka, he says that Karmani eva adhikarate ma phaleshu kadachana. So this attachment is the attachment to the fruits, the attachment to the outcomes of the action. So Krishna is saying Sangam Tyaktva Karmani Kuru, that after abandoning such egocentric attachment, we have to perform the action. Okay, so this is kind of a first mental preparation. This is kind of the first hint to the right attitude with which we have to perform the work. That is what Krishna is informing us. Okay. And as for the words, so tyaktva, so this of course is coming from tyaj dhatu. We have already seen this kind of modification so many times before. Tyaj dhatu, that means to abandon, modified using tva pratyay, so we get this form tyaktva. And the meaning becomes after abandoning. Okay. And sangam, so this of course is coming from the sangha. This is the pratipadika sangha. What is the meaning of sangha? Sangha means attachment. Basically this sangha, this means asakti. That asakti towards something, that attachment towards something, that is this sangha. And since this sangha is sort of a object, it is sort of a karma of this kridanta, tyaktva, that after abandoning this, after abandoning the attachment, so this in sort of a way behaves like an object of this kridanta tyaktva. That is why the form, this sangam form is dvitiya vibhakti and ekvachana. Okay. So in all, sangam tyaktva karmani kuru. After abandoning the attachment, after abandoning the egocentric attachment to the results, to the outcomes of our actions, then perform the action. Okay, so that is the first mental preparation Krishna informs us about. If I move on, I'll repeat this question. Punascha kim kritva. That what else Krishna wants us to do. And now he says, samaha bhutva. Okay, this bhutva, this means after being. And after being what? So after being samaha. Samaha, this means after being even-minded. Samaha means someone who is even-minded, someone who behaves in a similar way, someone who is equipoised. So all that is denoted by this samaha. So samaha bhutva, after being even-minded. Okay, after being equipoised. Again, this bhutva, this of course is coming from bhudhatu, modified using ta pratyaya. So bhu means to be. With this tva pratyaya, the meaning becomes after being. Okay, having become. And after becoming what? So samaha bhutva. After becoming or after being even-minded. Okay. But then we can raise another question that kayoho samaha bhutva. That after becoming even-minded, in what conditions, in what situations? So for that we have this word siddhi asiddhyoho samaha bhutva. Okay. This is a samasa which has two individual padas, siddhi and asiddhi. So here in the samasa, siddhi, this is an ikaranta strilinga pada. And this siddhi, this basically means, in the context of the shloka, we can understand the siddhi as success of any work. And so asiddhi, this is like a negation to it. So asiddhi can be understood as failure. Okay, so siddhi, success, asiddhi, failure. And here Krishna wants to say that samaha bhutva, after becoming even-minded in both, in success and in failure. So basically, we want to say siddhaucha asiddhaucha, that in success and in failure become samaha, become even-minded. So when we combine these two pratipadikas into a samasa, siddhya siddhi, this is the combined word, this is the samasa that we get. And now in this samasa, we will use the saptami vibhakti, but dvivachana, dual, because we have two distinct padas. That is why we were saying siddhaucha asiddhaucha, in siddhi and in asiddhi, in success and in failure. So since we have two individual padas, so we are using saptami vibhakti only, but dvivachanam. So siddhya siddhi, this becomes siddhya siddhyoho. That is what you see in the original shloka also. And now our entire sentence, this is kind of again the second condition, the second mental preparation that we have to do. Okay, the first was sangam tyaktva, after abandoning the egocentric attachment. Then we have to perform the work. That was the first mental preparation. And this is the second mental preparation where Krishna is telling us that siddhi asiddhyoho samaha bhutva, that after becoming even-minded in success and in failure, that after becoming samabhavi in both success and failure, then you perform the work. Okay, so this is the meaning so far. I hope all the padas, everything is clear. Now if you move on, okay, so now I am asking this question, kidrishaha. And this kidrishaha is going to describe a person who is able to satisfy these two conditions. Basically, who is able to do these two mental preparations, that sangam tyaktva and siddhi asiddhyoho samabhutva. Once a person is able to do this, then what does he become? What kind of person he becomes? That is what Krishna is describing here with this pada, yogasthaha. And this yogasthaha means steadfast in the yoga. Okay, stha. See, stha basically gives the sense of yaha tishtati, one who stays, one who resides. So that is that stha. And resides where? So in the yoga, so steadfast in the yoga, well established in the yoga, that is this person yogastaha. Okay, so you can think of this yogastaha as a complement to this implicit tvam, that Krishna is directly addressing Arjuna, that you Arjuna yogastaha, thus becoming well established in the yoga, karmani kuru. So this yogastaha is sort of a, what you say, a compliment to someone who is able to do these things. Okay. Now the question is, what is this yoga? Because as we have seen before, that the yoga, it has a lot of different meanings based on different contexts. So what is this yoga in the given context of the shloka? This entire definition of yoga is given in the last part of the verse. So let us see that now. So when we see this last part of the verse, we have this kriya pada uchyate. Okay, this uchyate, this basically means is said. And this form is coming from vach dhatu. Vach dhatu again means to say, right? And the form is lat lakara prathama purusha ek vachanam. But the most important thing to notice here is, by looking at this form, is this is the karmani form. Okay, this is the form of the verb that we used in a karmani prayoga, in a passive voice construct. Okay, so this uchyate is the karmani form of the kriya. That is why I am writing it as is said. See, if it was normal kartari prayoga, then I would have written as someone says. Okay, so in normal atlakara prathama purush ekvachanam, in kartari prayoga active voice, the translation would have been like someone or something says. But when it is a passive voice, when it is the karmani prayoga, so the way we write is said. Something is said. Okay, so that is this uchyate, the karmani form. Okay, and as to how I can identify whether this kriya pada is the karmani form or the kartari form, as to how I can identify this, I've spoken about this before also. Two main things to notice. First of all the karmani forms of the kriya pada, they are always atmanepadi. Okay, so that is the first thing. That all the karmani forms, they are always atmanepadi. Does not matter whether the dhatu is parasmepadi or atmanepadi, the karmani form for all the dhatus is always atmanepadi. So that is the first hint. And the second hint that you can usually use is this additional ya. Okay, so in all the major lakaras that we use, the lat lakara, lang lakara, lot lakara, vidhiling lakara, you are going to see this addition of ya. So when you see this addition of ya, when you see the form as atmanepadi, then you can take a hint that okay, maybe this form is the karmani form. And then you will be able to correctly translate it. That uchyate, this you cannot translate it as says, because this says, this is like an active voice. Uchyate has to be translated as is said, because it is a karmani kriya form. Okay, so I hope this is clear. See, it's just like this, that if you have this form pathati, so this pathati is the kartari form. So the translation goes like studies. Okay, someone studies, he studies, she studies, someone studies. But this is how we literally translate pathati as studies. But the passive voice, the karmani form of the same lat lakara prathama purusha ekvachanam, that is this pathyate. Again, both the things work here. The form is atmanepadi and you have this additional ya. So just by looking at pathyate, you can take this guess that okay, this is the karmani form. And so the translation will be is studied. That is how you are going to translate it, is studied. Because when we use this pathyate in any form, in any karmani form, balakena pustakam pathyate, the book is studied. The book is studied by the boy. So that is how it translates. So pathyate is studied, pathati studies. That is the difference between how you interpret the kartari and the karmani forms. Okay, so we have spoken about this distinction before also a lot of times, but I just thought a quick refresher is due. Okay, so uchyate is said. And if we'll move on, so kim uchyate, what is said? And here you get the definition of this yoga, this term yoga that is used by Krishna here. That samatvam yoga uchyate. That this samatvam, this equanimity of mind is said to be yoga. That the yoga, this term that is used here in the context of this present scenario in the Bhagavad Gita, here this yoga is referring to the samatva, the equanimity of mind. Again, because we know we are talking about karma yoga. So this yoga has to be understood in the context of karma yoga. And in the context of karma yoga, this is what we are referring to. This is what we essentially mean, this equanimity of mind, this samatva. That is what Krishna is telling us here. Okay, as for this pada, so again, our main pratipadika is sama, that we have seen before also, samaha bhutva. So sama basically means evenness. Okay, evenness of mind, that equipoised nature, that is that sama. Okay, and whenever we have to give the bhava of that thing, that the bhava of being sama, the state of being equanimous, then we use a pratyay that adds this twa. Okay, so we get this pratipadika samatva. And this samatva means the state of equanimity, that bhava of being equanimous. So whatever pratipadika we create using this twa, this bhave artha pratyaya, they are always neuter gender. Okay, so we know samatva, this pratipadika is the neuter gender. The form here is the prathama vibhakti ekvachanam form. Because we are saying the samatvam is said. Okay, this equanimity of mind is said to be what? This equanimity of mind is said to be yoga. Okay, and this yoga also is in prathama vibhakti ekvachanam only. Now don't confuse that this is a neuter gender pratipadika, and if yoga is describing this samatva, this also should be neuter gender. That this is what happens, right? The adjectives, the pronouns, they should match the vibhakti and gender of its noun. But here this yoga is not being used as an adjective. Again, this point also we have covered before also. This yoga here is sort of a complement. It is sort of a complement for this samatvam. So a complement, this has the liberty that its vibhakti, its gender can differ from the word it is qualifying. Okay, that is why samatvam, even though neuter gender, and yoga, even though pullinga gender, still this works. Because this yoga is not the adjective, it is a complement to this samatva. It is describing this samatva. Okay, so don't confuse that it should match the gender and all. No, that applies to adjective. It does not apply to complement. But I hope the meaning, the intent, that is clear. Even the padas are clear. So now let us see the anvaya along with the anuvada. Okay, so Dhananjaya, that is, O Arjuna, sangam tyaktva, after abandoning the attachment to the fruits of our action, and siddhya siddhyoho samahabhutva, and after being even-minded in both success and failure. And so, tvam yogastaha san. This san is just as dhatu modified using shatru pratyay, that to give the feeling that being like that. Okay, being like that. So, tvam yogastaha san. Thus staying, thus being yogastaha, steadfast in the yoga, karmani kuru. You then perform the work. You then perform the action. Okay, and then in the last sentence, Krishna explains the definition, the meaning of this yoga used in this context, in the context of karma yoga. And that is this samatvam yoga uchyate. That this state of equanimity, this state of equanimous mind, this is said to be yoga. Okay, samatvam yoga uchyate. So that is the entire translation of the shloka. Okay, and as to what Krishna intends with this verse is again exactly same as what we saw in the previous shloka. So if you have seen our video on the previous shloka, then you already know what is the intention that Krishna is giving here. Okay, that same thing is continued in this verse. In a nutshell, Krishna is basically telling us that if you are constantly worrying about the end goal, if you are constantly worried about the result, about the outcome of the work, then that means your mind is living in the imagined future. And if you are living in your own imagination, if you are living in that imagined future, then of course you are not fully present in this present moment. And again, this is very logical, very easy to understand that if you are not fully present in the work, in this present moment, then of course your mental energy is dissipated and it is not fully available at the work in hand. So you can never give the best to the work that you are performing. So to avoid that, to truly be able to do something inspirational, to be always inspired to do good work, you need to be fully present. And so you have to detach yourself. You have to stop thinking about the outcome, because that outcome, that everything is being taken care of in the present itself. Your own present hard work is going to become the outcome in the future. So why to worry about that imagined future? Just be wholly in the present moment. And again, we see this, that when the artists, they are deeply engrossed in the art they are performing, in the art they are doing, there is a state of self forgetfulness. So that state of self forgetfulness, where you are completely engrossed in the work in hand, you are engrossed in a level that you yourself become the work. Your identity also does not remain, because at that time when someone comes and if they calls you, if they ask you anything, if they start talking to you, you still are not able to reply, because you are not there at that moment. You are fully there in the work. So that state of self forgetfulness, that is when we lose our identity, we lose our egocentric attachments and all, we become the work that we are performing. And in that state of self-forgetfulness is when we create the most inspired work. Okay, that is the truly inspirational work in that state when we do. Okay, so that is what Krishna is hinting us, that the right attitude when we work anything. Okay, the same thing will be expounded in the coming verses also. Beautiful verses that will come, that can give us a very new perspective in the way we approach, in the way we undertake any work. Okay, and extremely important. Why it is important, in the next shloka Krishna is going to tell you. So again, stay connected with these videos, and I hope you are able to follow these shlokas along with some commentary, some bhashya on them, so you get the deeper meanings behind these verses also. Okay, and apart from this, I hope all the padas, everything was clear. Again, the same is given in the PDF sheet that you can download from the link in the description box. I'll now take the leave. I'll meet you with another video, with another shloka. Until then, stay awesome, stay happy, keep learning Sanskrit. Vayam punha milamaha. Dhanyavad.